Hello friends! I got a couple of comments on the secretary desk video about the jig I used to resaw the wood, so I thought I would talk about it for a bit and also show the clip where I use it at more normal speed. I'm making good progress on part 2 of the desk. In fact, here is a sneak peek at the doors, which I'm really happy with. But okay, the jig. So when you want to resaw a big piece of timber, you can use something called a kerfing plane, which might look something a bit like this, with a fence, so you keep a set distance from the edge, and instead of a blade you would have a saw blade here that makes the same curve as the saw that you're going to use. So if you wanted to use this saw, you would have a blade in the plane that matches the width of this blade. Now I don't have a kerfing plane, which is why I'm using this for the demonstration, but I do have a circular saw. And since I was going to resaw about 5 meters of 2x10, that felt like a reason to try to make a curve as deep as possible before I went on to the handsaw, if that makes sense. So this jig is just a couple of pieces of construction lumber. It's been flattened with a hand plane on top, and the edges are planed square to the top face. The circular saw fits in here. It's quite tight, but it sits by friction, and I built it so the blade is centered when cutting 45mm construction lumber. So if you have a piece of wood here, the jig can slide on top of that. You can obviously only cut 45mm construction lumber. You could put in spacers here to make this gap thinner so it would work on thinner pieces. Maybe with some sort of screw adjustment here. I don't know. This was a really quick build, I just threw something together really. But it works, and it saved me loads of time hand sawing. That said, I would not necessarily use this as a resawing jig. Like, I wouldn't use it to cut all the way through with a circular saw. That would make it really difficult to hold on to the piece while you're cutting it. I'm not sure how that would be done really. So I see this more as a kerfing jig, a sort of power tool kerfing plane that can make a really deep curve. Let's cut to the clip of where I'm using the jig. So here you can see how I clamped the pieces to my sawhorse, and yeah, it would be very challenging to hold on to the piece if I had something that my circular saw could cut all the way through, which is why I think of it as a kerfing jig and not a resawing jig. It's probably a bit difficult to tell in the very high-speed version in the main video, but I make 2 passes on each side. First at half the depth my saw is capable of, and then at full depth. That is just to reduce the load on the blade really, and if you had a more powerful saw I'm sure you could go full depth from the start. I made 2 mistakes here. The first is that I really should have planed the edges of this wood before I started kerfing it. It didn't really matter in this case because the wood wasn't that twisted, but if you had a piece of construction lumber or whatever that's heavily cupped or heavily warped, then obviously the jig will follow the top edge, whatever the top edge is doing. So if it's twisted, you'll end up with a twisting curve. which is pretty useless. I was lucky really here and got curves that lined up really well, so it worked out. But next time I use it, I will definitely make sure both the edges are straight, flat, and parallel with each other. The second mistake I made was, you can see when I flip the workpiece around, I really should flip it end for end so that the jig is always referencing the same face of the board. Again, it didn't really matter because I got the blade really centered in the jig. It makes the cut on center no matter which face it's referencing, but say for example the blade would be off by 1 millimeter to either side, that would have made these curves offset from another by 2 millimeters, which is about the thickness of the curve. So again, that would have made the cut completely useless. But other than that, I think it worked out really well. I'm going to use the jig on more pieces for the secretary desk, for part 3 specifically. And if you want to make a jig like this yourself or improve my design and add more features, maybe make an adjustable version for different thicknesses or whatever you want to do, I hope this video has given you some ideas and some help with that. So yeah, thank you for watching. I hope to see you soon, maybe in the secretary desk part 2.